Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Happy office hours. Kinsey and I are here together. For those of you who are watching the video or you're here live, you can see Kinsey and I are sitting next to each other for once, which I love. And Kinsey is going to disown me because apparently I talk really loud on these. So I'm going to try to keep my cool and talk like a podcast host. But first of all, Kinsey and I are next to each other because we're in Wellington right now. We go to Ocala tomorrow. The reason that we're in these spots is because we're recording with some really exciting new Ride IQ coaches. And we can't announce who they are just yet because some things should be surprises, but when I say we're excited because these are coaches that have come up over and over from you guys that you would love to work with. And like when Kinsey and I have been there recording, we're just, blown away by these people, as we are our current coaching staff. But we're getting more into disciplines like dressage and hunter jumpers. And so that's where the backgrounds these coaches are coming from. So more to come on that, but that's what we're up to this week. And what we're up to tonight at this moment is an Ask an Expert event with the Carters. Jen and Kyle Carter are with us. And what we're talking about is how to build a training schedule or a training program for your horse that makes sense given the horse that you have and the goals that you're working toward. And that can be that can be an activity that you're just like, where do I start? Am I doing this right? So the Carters are going to kind of pull back some of the uncertainty around that topic. Jen and Kyle, as always, pleasure to have you here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
And we're excited to see you in person tomorrow.
Yes.
So all four of us will be sitting in real life next to each other as of tomorrow. But tonight, we're still 2 and 2. All right. So maybe I'll throw it back to you guys to tell us. I know that probably the best place to start with this sort of topic is like, what factors should we be considering about our horses before we embark on like, how many weeks should the schedule be? What should the week to week look like? So maybe I'll throw it to you guys to talk about what those factors are that we're considering. And then I know you mentioned ahead of time that it might be beneficial to go into some case studies, like specific horses that we've made up for the purpose of an example, so people can relate their situation most closely to one of those 3 situations. So do you guys want to kind of take it from there to introduce the topic?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think probably a couple of the most important factors is the type of horse you're riding, and then what level you're going and how far away from the event you're going, if that is the end goal. If you're just trying to plan a schedule that makes sense, then that obviously hinders it a bit. But those would be probably, did I miss any?
No, I don't think so. I think that age obviously comes into it a little bit. Like there's a lot of factors to your individual athlete. I think Jen hit the ones that are probably most general important, because whenever you're doing a schedule, you need to know those things about your athlete. But when you're doing it, you've got previous fitness, as if the horse has raced in its past, if it's done upper level eventing, if it's showing at the upper level or done dressage at the upper level. It is always easier to get a horse fit that has already been fitted up. So that's a factor. Athletic prowess. I mean, as much as it kind of is a struggle to kind of come out and put that on there, is if you're riding an extreme athlete, you can get away with less. I'm not suggesting you should. It always seemed that my extreme athletes I did more with because they almost mentally required more. But maybe that's a little bit then maybe that mentality is part of it. And, there's a general fitness to some horses. It's just no different than human athletes. If you take a exceptional natural athlete and put them in a competition, they're able to handle things physically better than ones that aren't. I had a friend who I went to school with who won the national, it was a ski competition, but it was downhill with cross-country skis. But he won the national level competition in Canada, so it's not exactly a small feat. not telegraph. I can't remember what it's called.
Telemarking.
Yes. So he won that. This is a long time ago, like back in the 80s, but he went in and he won it. He had never done it before in his life, but everything
That's superhuman.
Yeah, but that's how he was. Everything he did, it was the same thing. He had incredible balance, incredibly athletic, very capable of transitioning, and a super cognitive ability about what his actions were. That said, he also got injured a ton because he would let his athleticism lead him into places that he wasn't strong enough or fit enough to do. And on that, you've got the, you do have to have a structural fitness to it. I always am amazed with the students that, I mean, we keep pretty close track of our people, and they'll go away for 10 days, or this horse threw a shoe, and then I was sick, and they just don't ride the horses. And then they come in for a lesson, and my jump lessons are pretty, like, they're an hour, and they're fairly intense because I'm trying to cover what I need to cover that will help them in a 5-year period. So I'm not trying to just pass the time. But they will go and they'll come into a lesson. They won't say anything about it, or we'll go to a show, and they'll be like, "Oh, can I go prelim?" And I'll know they've had these big blocks in their time off, and I'm like, "Do you not understand at the basic level what we're doing?" "Oh yeah, no, I get it." And it's like, I don't think you do, because even some of them have worked for us, and they know our system of day-to-day stuff to get a horse ready, and they will be like completely oblivious that we're doing it for that reason. It's not because every day we get up and we're like, 6 days a week, joy, this is awesome. There's lots of days you're like, I don't want to do this. When it was freezing cold a couple of weeks ago, we were able to back the load off a little bit because of the time of year, not because of the horse, So I think that's a big problem, is that people tend to want to think that it's okay that their horse is fine with it, that there's not going to be any complications from that. And then it's always, oh, that was bad luck, that one got hurt. And it's like, is it bad luck or is it bad preparation? So on that, the extremely athletic can handle things that maybe the less athletic can't. But maybe the work you're doing with the extremely athletic is a little bit different. Like an extremely athletic horse would maybe do, maybe they don't need to do gallops to get ready for a low level event. So let's say we're going to start with the extreme athletic, and then we'll choose the levels they're doing. Then we'll take them and knock off a few going down the order, but making them all ready for, and our highest level be prelim, let's say. At intermediate, I mean, you do want to really make sure that you're not cutting corners, because it does not work well. And then, where are you? If I had a girl that rode with me one time, and she came in and we did a gallop, and she was like, I've never galloped in a field before. If this girl was going intermediate on the horse was very hot and very difficult. So her answer to that was to gallop it in the indoor arena, or not covered, or just an outdoor arena, but not a big one. You can't gallop in that. You can't prepare a horse correctly. And by that, mentally, the horse that was very difficult never got over. It would get out into the open field, and it was a lunatic. But of course it was. It was never experiencing these things. And so you're trying to fit in and prepare their minds as well. So let's say we take the extremely athletic, and we're going to say that's I'm not going to put a breed on it, because the reality is, I know quarter horses that have done the world championships at the highest level successfully. I've seen thoroughbreds do Grand Prix jumping and win medals. I've seen warm bloods that were able to just gallop and never hit a bottom. And I've seen thoroughbreds that would go out and after 3 minutes be completely indifferent to the experience. And then the other thing is the extremely athletic moves easier on itself. Well, if it moves easier on itself, it's not going to be as likely to get injured. The skill work's always the same, though. And I think if you really attend to the skill work, your fitness level is going to go up quite a bit just off of the day-to-day riding. And if you look at your lesson plans through Ride IQ, you can say, okay, I've only got 15 minutes today, and you can grab that lesson. But a 15-minute ride is, I would say, just under maintenance. I think maintenance of fitness is probably 25 minutes. Increasing fitness is from 25 to 55 minutes on a daily ride. And you can always drop in light days or days off or whatever, as long as you're maintaining, you balance out. You probably would want to look at it and almost do that math through the week of how many minutes of riding that is in a week. So I'm so bad at math. Just talk for a second.
Kyle, while you think about that, 2 questions for you. One is the minutes that you're providing right now, is that of skill work or is that inclusive of a warm-up?
Either one.
Yeah, just working.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's post warm-up.
No.
Oh, sorry, includes warm-up.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's full ride. And then my other question is, and this might be kind of a silly question, but it came to mind and I was like, someone else might be thinking it. When you're saying like your horse might be super athletic or might not be super athletic, are you determining that solely based off of how tired they get while you ride them, or how are you determining that?
Just a lot of factors, like he said, touched on the way they move, because they can be light and springy on themselves. And then, I think how tired as well is one thing. You can definitely, there are horses that'll just keep going. It doesn't matter how long you're out there, and they'll stay going. And then there's some that kind of lose it after 10 minutes. But I think there's a lot of factors that go into that, determining how athletic they are as well.
Yeah, like the way that they move and adjust and handle themselves, the way they go, carry themselves across the ground. How easy are they? How easy to jump on them? Does the horse come out and he's a block of muscle that needs to be loosened up? Well, he's a block of muscle. You're not getting the same level of athletic performance that you're going to get once they're loosened up. So those things are, just what you have to constantly be aware of. Okay.
So,
do you want to go? I can probably. Sorry, someone just came to the house. So do you want to go deal with it? Okay.
So just to, either of you are free to go. if someone's there, no problem at all. So one thing for my own brain and to keep track of these examples that we're giving, this first one, I know Kyle didn't want to assign a breed to it, and it's not to say that this is breed specific, but let's say this is like a 10-year-old thoroughbred who's aiming for a prelim. Maybe its name is Poppy. So it's a mare. But I think it would be cool to hear how far out we should. I think a schedule is always good to be in place, but if you're aiming for a prelim, at what point do you build this schedule? Is that like
as a rule of
be on top of it?
We kind of usually, as a rule of thumb, we would start with a 6-week program and vary it from there. If you have more time's better. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can't do what you need to do. And then again, if you have an exceptional horse and you have less time, you don't want to cut corners on the fitness, but you can get away with a little bit less if you had to, if that makes sense.
And a 6-week program assumes that they've been in regular work, right?
Like maintenance type work. I think if you're starting from dead scratch and the horse hasn't been in work for months, you want to add on a few weeks, because what we personally do, and a lot of people we know, you hack them, you just walk for a period of time to get everything kind of strong in their tendons and their ligaments and such. And then you start adding in the work. It is very similar to a human athlete. If you did nothing for 4 months, maybe you could get off the couch and go run a 5K, but you're probably going to pay for it later. So you have to kind of be keeping in mind, you might feel great, but you do have to have the base work, and the horses are the same. So you don't want to, if you had a horse that is sat in the field, you don't want to just start out going, okay, yeah, we're going to be at an event in 6 weeks. You would add in weeks to just spend walking and getting them stronger, and then adding in the trotting and the fitness work a little bit.
And on that, what Jen said, the 5K thing is a perfect example, because I think this a lot when we're out walking courses or when we've gone and done a race. when you go out and say, I didn't prepare my horse well enough and it's not quite fit enough, and you go to a competition, do you go and make time? Do you go, okay, my horse needs 45 seconds more to complete this course? Oh, it's not quite up to it. Because your horse is going to do what you ask. Their hearts are huge and they're going to try for you. And usually what I see is people that shirk on the fitness, but on the day they don't go, my horse isn't fit. They let them, and they'll say, oh, well, he just travels that fast, or he's just a fast horse, or whatever. But if you take those same people and put them in a 5K, they're going to run at the speed they're comfortable because they're making the choice. But if I'm their coach, or or I have some device to make them go at whatever speed I want, then I'm going to make them go at the speed I want. That's going to get me the better ribbon, and they're going to end up suffering for it, right? We did a couple of years ago. I was at an event walking a course, and just for the preparation part. And two of the girls that were walking with me were late to the course walk, and I had to go back and show jump in advance for us. So we started walking. We were behind. It was a prelim course. Got about halfway around, and I was like, "We gotta run this, girls. We're going." And they're both like early 20s, late teens. This supposedly, you think riding and doing whatever, and we run. So I started running, and I made them run with me. I was like, I do not have time to wait. You were late to get here. You're costing me. And I'm running, and I had to run at the speed I could kind of keep things going along. Obviously, they could only go so fast. Within 15 minutes, they're lagging behind. But more than that, one of them lamed themselves doing it. I don't even care, because all I can think is you're kind of making my problem, but bigger problem of being late. But also, she would be one of those ones that just wouldn't ride the horse, and then just expect it, and it would always make time. And I'm like, she's finishing in this horrible, like, oh, because we had to stop and go through the jumps and everything. And she was like, I'm dying. I'm like, this is why I'm trying to get your horse fit, And it starts with that 6 weeks of leg work at the prelim level and above. That is sort of our standard training. I would say you could do it probably 3 weeks and start working them a little bit.
If they were in work, you wouldn't start from nothing.
Yeah, I would start with nothing and go to a little bit, as long as they're on turnout and things like that. Because remember, they're walking around and stuff in the field. And then novice horses, because the work you're doing is less strenuous. So your time that you're riding them is less. So they might do flat work at 15 minutes to begin with. Whereas we're trying to get the intermediate horses to do 20 minutes of flat work when we start with them, or 20 to probably start. But just on the time riding, so 35 minutes a week is 210 minutes of riding during a week. That's pretty good. I mean, you're gonna get a horse fairly fit on that. 25 minutes is 150 minutes.
How many days are you factoring in here?
Six days. So that's a pretty big drop.
We do a 6-week program here. I know you can get away with a 6 day. 5 days a week you can get away with, certainly at the lower levels, because I know a lot of people don't have time to do 6 days a week. So, but that's how we do it.
Yeah. And then 15 minutes a day is 90 minutes. So it's like a worlds apart, and it's okay to do a 15-minute day. But if you're, say, going to do 3 days or 4 days of work, you probably want to do 35 to 40 minutes, whether some of it's hacking and trotting or whatever. This is to go, I'd say for training level, we were going to do prelim. Sorry, athletic horse through all divisions, through all of it. I apologize. So.
Okay, this is the athletic horse program.
Yeah.
I named the athletic horse Poppy, so we can all keep track.
It's a mare.
Yeah,
okay, perfect. So 6 weeks of leg work before it does its. So the 6 weeks is walking, building to trotting for 15 minutes. Okay. If you want to know what that looks like, I'm doing a program right now for Ride IQ on bringing Gus back into work. And I talk about it, and I'm going to do a weekly sort of thing so you can see how boring this all can be to get to where you want to get to. But at prelim, they need to do 5 or 6 weeks of road work before you really start working them to do the level they're doing, because the speed's significant, the distance is significant, and the height is big enough. So after that 6 weeks with our athletic horse, we're going to go to, and those 6 weeks are walking, building to 15 minutes of trot, and what it is sort of hacking 30 to 40 minutes, and then adding the trot at the end of that. Then the first time the trot would be 2 minutes. Then not too long, like 4 days. You can go 4, 6, and you just sort of incrementally bring it up until you're at 15 minutes for a week, so that they're trotting and still walking for 30 minutes, let's say, under tack. That horse at that point is base strong, so you can start to do something with them. So that 7th week would add in flat work probably 2 days. I would still have it trot probably 2 days, and then might do a very, very small jumping. And that would be the 7th week. And for a prelim horse, that small jumping day, I'm talking like 2 foot, 2'6", doesn't need to be big. They're probably going to be feeling pretty good about themselves anyway. So, hang on. You don't need to jump them big to kind of take the wind out of their sails. Then, sorry.
Go ahead.
So then week 8 would be maybe 2 days of little jumps and removing one of the one trot and keeping your flat work and maybe upping the flat work 5 minutes. Right. So then the following week you're at 20, 25. Yeah, you'd be doing 30 minutes of flat work. You're just about ready to go to a show now. So it's quite there. And then you're doing that and you're jumping 2 days a week, and the jumps are now going up a little bit. You could do one jump day that's bigger and one small jump day. You vary it. The one thing you have to do when you're fitting horses is change things up. You only get fit in the regiment you do. So if you do one thing, that's all you're going to be. And then that 8th week, you would have built to, you could have a canter actually in those previous weeks, a little canter gallop sort of thing. And then that 8th week, you're pretty much ready to go do a proper gallop set, jump a proper height, and you should be ready to probably compete in that 9th week, I would say.
On the athletic horse.
Yeah. And
that's super interesting.
That's looking at a prelim horse that's gone prelim. Now, I think at prelim, they have to be somewhat athletic. But on a less athletic horse, I might actually forgo some of the trotting, not in the first bit, but in the next bit, because the trotting on an unathletic horse tends to just work like they don't use themselves the same way. So I might actually do a little more flat work with them, add a little bit of terrain in to accomplish the same task. You have to be creative. We have a conditioning pond. That horse would be going in the conditioning pond, so it was forced to physically work in the correct way and not hate you for it, basically. And I think you still can do it on that timeline, but I do think you have to kind of maybe one of the days is like cantering rails, that sort of thing. And this is like saying, very mediocre athletic horse. If they're exceptionally unathletic, which some prelim horses are, I think you have to actually extend it another week or two to add in a good enough base that they don't overextend themselves at the show. And then the gallop schedule is quite straightforward.
I was going to say, maybe on the unathletic type, you add in that extra gallop. Maybe some people, we don't do it often, but they'll on one day later in the program do a sprint day with the horse versus a long gallop just to get the heart rate up and get them a little fitter.
And that comes down to then on your unathletic horse, are you galloping every 4 days or are you galloping every 6 days? We do every 6 days. We do it pretty much on everything. But if I have one that's a little bit wanting in some way, I'll do on one trot day in the week. So a typical weekly schedule, we've gone over this before, is first day's flat work. Mondays are days off around here. First day's flat work, second day's jumping, third day can be a trot or another flat work day, depending on the horse. Fourth day is the Friday, and that's jump day. Saturday would be flat, gallop on Sunday. Now you've got an easy day after every hard day. I think that's important. We always have the horses work the day before they jump, because if they work the day before they jump, everything's been stretched out the day before. So when I jump them, I'm less likely to get an injury. This is not a hard and fast rule. It's just what we do to try to maintain them. Some horses are better jumping every second day. So the trot day with your less athletic horse, you might go trot and then add a couple of little hill sprints or something, to boost everything else. And the very athletic horse probably can go quieter. Once they're fit, they sustain their fitness pretty well. So you don't have to keep building endlessly and end up doing like 3/8 and or anything stupid like that just because you're going to go, because you're continuing at prelim. Once they're galloping at sort of 3/4s, we usually cap them at prelim, and that's pretty much their, might need to bump them up a little bit if we're going up to a hilly course or that sort of thing, the week or two before. But all of that is laid out in the schedule that we're discussing, where every week that you have we should have had our calendar up. Maybe we can put a poster or something up for you guys to see how a horse's competition schedule lays out. But all of this is going on, like the preamble stuff is going on every one of them. And then the preamble, the actual work with them can change according to their temperament and that sort of thing. Because that's the other thing, is if you have a really athletic horse that's lazy, you're going to have to make it interesting, because they will find a way to make you do more work than they're doing.
We have questions.
I think once you've done your first competition, and the first competition should probably happen at prelim level after 3 or 4 gallops. I think 3's fine. Then you kind of then you start modifying the skill work more into it and letting that develop fitness. Remember, their heart rate's going to go up if they're doing dressage.
Got it. So when you say the preamble is the same across the board, does that mean those 6 weeks, when you aren't in competition season yet, but you have kind of your first show of the season coming up, the 6 weeks remain the same in terms of that walk work that builds to trot work, that builds to more trot work, and then the differentiating factors happen a little bit more after that 6 weeks, depending on your horse's athleticness, the level you're going?
No, because the 6 weeks is for prelim or above.
Okay.
You could, again, at training, you can drop that back 4 weeks.
Okay.
Novice, honestly, at novice, I think you walk out of the barn, you go to the ring, you pick up a trot, and you start working them. You could do a week or two of leg work, but really at that level, your base work is a little different. Your expectation physically on them is so different that you don't need to think maybe as long on hardening the tendons and ligaments with that walking work, which is what it's doing. So you shrink the first part.
You mentioned Saturday, whichever day of the week, but one day a week as like a gallop day if you're going
Sunday.
Prelim.
Yep.
Sundays. And are those gallop days only happening in like the 3 weeks after the 6 weeks? So you're doing those gallops 3 times before your first show. And you mentioned 3/4s. Would that be 4s at your prelim speed?
No, so sorry. Of course, I just always assume what we should do is we should put down like a general, what looks like the gallop schedule. So you see what we're doing. I'm not going to say everybody should do it, but gallop would be 3/4s would be the gallop day is 20 minutes of walk, 15 minutes of trot, then a 3-minute walk, and then a canter of whatever time, then a walk, then a 3-minute, a 3-minute walk, then the same canter again. So let's say we start at 3 2s. You would do a 2-minute canter after a 3-minute walk. You do another 3-minute walk. You do a 2-minute canter. Then you do your final 2-minute canter. Then you do 20 minutes of walking afterwards. You have to cool them out. People always cut on that stuff, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, you love your horse. You want to compete well. The last thing I want to do when a horse has a problem, whether it's an injury or it doesn't go well, I don't want to look back, I'm going to anyways, and go, oh, I knew when I missed that I shouldn't have done that. Then I shouldn't have done it. Like that's not hindsight's 2020 if you knew beforehand. Hindsight 2020 is I had no idea it was going to cause that. And now I know I shouldn't have done it. That's how you learn, by making mistakes through all the years. That's how I learned, was screwing it up so many times. So the warm-up's important, the cool down's important. If the week looks where we gallop on Sunday, the lightest day is after the hardest day. So Monday's the day off. And I will say that gallop schedule I just talked about, like the actual day of 20 minutes, 15 minutes of trot, then the 3-3s, then 20 minutes of walk, it's actually less than your flat days at that point. When it gets up to be advanced horses, it's no longer that way because you're changing the gallops around so much. Again, if you've got hills, you're still interval training, in my opinion. You're just doing maybe a hill interval rather than by a stopwatch. So I don't, unless you just do one gallop, it's always an interval, isn't it? So people say, oh, I don't do interval training, I do hills. And it's like, yeah, I think that's doing intervals, but you have a benefit. You can reduce the minutes that you have to gallop. If you're trotting rolling hills, I wouldn't reduce the minutes in there because that's actually for the warm up of the body more than anything. In conditioning day, the idea is that you're starting. The reason we have a 3-minute walk is it usually follows the cycle of the heart rate dropping back down. So it goes up to the gallop, it drops back down, and when it gets to a certain point, about 75 to 85 beats per minute, we start the next gallop, because it's not how long a horse's heart rate stays up that determines fitness, it's how many times it goes up. So you have to think that you're conditioning in that part. Gallop day is for the heart and lungs. Muscles somewhat, but muscles have been working hard all week. It's for honestly, the flat work almost creates more endurance. So you think if you shirk the flat work, like that's the other thing people always ask me, like, well, what gallop should I be doing at intermediate? It's like, well, I don't know. I probably don't have to do as much as you maybe, because my horses work pretty hard during the week, so that the gallop is not the most important part of the week fitness wise. And I don't think people kind of keep that in mind,
Yeah, absolutely. And on your 6-day schedule that you outlined, are your horses hacking every single day as well?
At a level, for them and above, they do.
For how long?
Right now, they're doing, I think, 30 minutes. When the walker's up and going, they're on for an hour. And when we used to do it ourselves, they hacked for an hour to an hour and a half every day when we were the ones riding them. Like, we're not out hacking them. We've got some girls who ride for us who are great. And so they hack them out because the walker's not working at the moment. But when we were doing it, it wasn't half an hour. It was an hour, because I don't want to look back on it and think, what did I miss?
And when you're hacking, are they like long frame, no connection?
Yeah, walking, long frame, no connection, low pulls better than high. And it's always a bit of a struggle, because, some of those horses are a bit happy, cheerful, animated. And so in general, on those ones, everybody always grabs on their face and shortens their neck up, and it always makes them loopy. And then they shorten their face more, neck up more, and it makes them more loopy. So you're always kind of like, let go to the buckle. You can't hang on to them. They'll settle down. You don't let them run off, but you have to train how you want them to go. I don't want them pissing off with me every time I let go of the reins. So when I hack them, I practice that. You're not just out there on your phone. Unless you're listening to Ride IQ, in which case you're on your phone in the right way.
I was going to say, people could queue up. They could queue up a conversations with coaches. That would be a long hack. You generally chat pretty long on those. Or they could queue up and ask an expert, and they know they're getting exactly 60 minutes for their hack.
Exactly. But it is like injuries happen. It's like any sport. I'm injured. Unfortunately, right now I seem to be injured more than I'm not. But horses are going to have little things go on. The muscles are going to get sore. All that stuff's going to happen. You got to figure out what it is that makes your athlete best. And then you do have to attend to a stronger athlete is always safer than a weaker athlete. We're finding that in the falls with older riders in our sport. They talk about how in other sports, they work strength for the athlete so that they don't have as many injuries. And they feel like what happens in our sport is we start working so much on the horse, and then we're not as strong when something happens, because things happen, hard in our sport. I'm sure I've been hit a few times harder than any NFL football player. It just happens. So you got to be strong. But the horse athlete has to be stronger, because they're always going to be the ones that are dealing with the pressure,
I feel like this, I'm stretching for a segue here or an opportunity to mention this, but I said at the beginning that Kinsey and I have been meeting with some incredible coaches this week, and all three of the coaches we've met with, we met them out at their farm at 8:30 a.m. They had either been for a run or been to the gym prior to starting their day of riding, 8 horses. And I was like, the first one we met, I was like, that's very cool. And the Carters, I know you guys are always out for runs, which I've always thought was very cool. But I think, I don't know, I was inspired by all of them because it's easy to skip that from the rider side of things too.
Yeah, but you were in Wellington. They probably were having Starbucks and going to the gym and then at the farm.
Totally. Yes, it was. I'm sure that the gym was nice or the running route was nice, whatever it was. Everything was nice.
But that is an excellent. So you got to hit it right on the head. You can ride 15 horses a day, and I know one of the riders you had. She was jumping. She's told me she had 20 horses to jump that day, and she's run marathons. Like, she's an incredibly good athlete, and she's working on staying fitter even. But it does sort of open up the light of what I was saying about you can't work them in one place. Like, if you work them on one type of footing, they only get really fit for that type of footing. So you have to vary things. And that's exactly what those riders are doing. They're varying it. They're not saying I'm going to ride enough to be fit. They're going, I'm going to ride, but I better make sure I'm taken care of in other ways. And I wish I was better doing more stuff, but that's with the horses always. I mean, if I'm limping around or uncomfortable because I didn't take good enough care of myself and wasn't able to handle something, that happens. But I really don't want that for my horses.
Yeah. So we got a comment in the chat, and Amy's saying she said she's bringing her horse Blair back into full work. She's been tricky to get fit in Amy's experience, and things she's been told about her past lead Amy to believe that Blair may not have been ever properly fit. She is also quite green and needs schooling. She said she's been riding her at the walk for about 10 minutes each morning, working on her lateral work to help her suppleness and skill work, and then around 20 to 25 minutes of a flat work lesson with Ride IQ. She's asking, is she overdoing it? She's a good sweater and does get hot after work, but cools down.
I think that sounds like and what level are we like?
Right.
What I'm assuming is she said she's greener, so I can't imagine she was doing a big level. Let's just assume not. That sounds like an excellent work. 10 minutes of walking to allow the horse to, just let go of itself. Fit 25 minutes of a lesson. And that's the thing is you're with those lessons, as you probably discovered, it's not like you're just trotting around not doing stuff. You're doing stuff with them, creating that versatility that we need out of them. That's part of the process. And then when you're done, I'm sure, a little hack, you said it sweats well, deals with the heat well. The question would be is how are you figuring the temperature? Are you gauging it because it's panting? Or are you actually taking his temperature? We have on a normal dressage day with not that hot of weather, when we work on the flat with one of the upper level horses, they will come back to the barn at 102. In the heat, when we were like competing for Hong Kong and like those events where it was over 100 degrees, the dressage days, they'd come back to the barn at 103. I always was like a 103 is the highest I want them to go. But on cross country day, they might have only gone to 103 or 102 because we prepare them differently for that moment. Whereas you get going in the dressage and you just keep pushing their temperature up and up and up. It doesn't get a chance to drop back down, which is, it's kind of funny when you started taking their temperatures, how much you notice that it's actually almost, they all ran hotter most of the time doing dressage work.
I would also question how many days a week is that? Like, so you're telling us what you're doing on the day, but is that 3 days, 6 days?
Yeah, she said each morning. So I don't know if that's every day. Amy, tell us in chat. Amy did add she's competing Blair at 60 centimeters with her at the moment, but hoping to build up to 80 centimeters. And she's checking her temp by just touching her body at this stage. And she's riding her 6 days a week.
I think it sounds like you're doing plenty for that level for sure to get her fit. Like that should be great.
So the only thing I would say with that is you said that you don't think she's ever been fit, and it sounds like you feel like she's not quite responding the way you'd like. So my suggestion would be, if she's never been fit before, what you want to do is actually take her beyond this. This is plenty of work for doing what you're doing. It's plenty of work probably for doing the 80 centimeters. In fact, it guarantees enough work for the 80 centimeter. But what you want to do is maybe take her past that. So you're doing 35 minutes, maybe a couple days a week, maybe 3 days a week, building to that, because you're going to need to start this is her first time getting fit. So this is going to be harder. That's going to be a big part of what you're going to do. So you're always going to try to stay one little bit ahead. In a couple of years at this level, you probably could work this amount and you'll find that she's just fine with it. But that's how this works, is your horse develops and changes as you make him into more of an athlete, and then that they can rely on that more. It's harder the first time.
Okay, I have a few things. That's makes sense. It's really interesting. Kinsey and I just Googled how much is 80 centimeters. It's 2.5 feet for anyone. Amy is an Aussie Red IQ user. Amy, we love you for it. So anyone who doesn't translate quickly from centimeters to any other measurement, it's about 2.5 feet that they're
Kyle's
working
so
toward.
upset right now.
Amy, it's only the Americans, we're so far behind. In Canada, where I'm from, I understand what centimeters are.
I agree that it's absurd. I wish I would like to just convert myself for the sake of it, which I will. You heard it here first. It's my resolution now. Okay, so one question that I have is, once a horse has done their first competition of the year, so we went through this 9 or 10 or 11, whatever week schedule based on your horse's athleticism. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of factors there, but then we had the first show of the year and somebody's planning to compete like regularly, whatever that means. You guys could actually define what that means. I don't know what's reasonable, but between competitions, how does your weekly schedule adjust?
Well, yes. I would say after the competition, they would get Monday off, competition Saturday, Sunday. I guess some can be Saturday, but this is what we typically do. And so they get Monday off. Usually, depending on the level, the horse might get Tuesday off unless the next competition's in 2 weeks and it's a big one. And then they'd have kind of ease back into the same schedule.
Yeah, so like Tuesday that week after competition, the horses usually will work longer, lower, stretched out again. Variety makes a stronger athlete. So that day can be dedicated to low neck work. There's just big circles, not a lateral work included in it, but nothing really pivoting or that sort of thing. Then usually that week, the Wednesday is actually now no longer a jump day. It's usually a proper flat day, and then they jump on Thursday. The schedule changed because we competed on the weekend. I don't want to jump as close to that competition. Let's say we did cross country on Sunday. That's typically how we're describing this. So I want to jump just a little bit later. So that'd be Thursday. And that week I might only need to jump once because they did compete on the weekend. Maybe I need to jump more than once because they competed on the weekend and it was a disaster. But you're hoping not to have that. And then Jen said you've got that 2 weeks till the next show, if that's the level. At prelim, we used to do 2 weeks between them a lot. I'd say we probably are more inclined to do 3 now. Yeah. But 2 wouldn't be out of this world. So you do a different, that gallop that weekend could be a reduced gallop. If the horse is already is fit, you might not need to do as much that weekend, but you can then ramp the skill work up. So your competition skill work improves, but the fitness has stayed the same because it was already fit enough. And that kind of carries on through the whole year. Now, what you need to understand is the prelim horses might compete. I mean, we probably compete prelim horses maybe 10 times in a year. Training horses, 12. Novice, I don't think there's really I don't think about it. I'm not going to take them to 50 shows, but I don't want to go to 50 shows, and that would be inappropriate anyways. But I think novice is kind of open-ended. We're just not going to do more. I mean, at novice, if it's done 5 novices here, it wants to think about going training. And if it needs a few more, that's fine. But at the advanced level, in a full year, my advanced horse would compete 7 times. So this is a lot of work. Like last year, Gus did Fairhill or Maryland, the 3-star. He did 3 intermediates before on a 4-week, 3-week, I think it was 2 weeks, and then it was 3 weeks to the show. But his last competition before that was in March, and that was first competition was September. End of August. I'm really bad with dates but he had he worked to get better, to make him, because I was not happy with where we were. He needed more strength and whatnot. So if they only do 7 competitions in a year, you can just imagine how you have to fill these gaps in. So you're doing jumper shows and things like that sustain them. But there's a lot more onus on the galloping on the advanced horse, because it's not competing as much and you're trying to ramp them up to something extreme. Whereas the prelim horses, they get there and pretty much the work stays about the same. So it's not as big a deal, and it's going on more consistently, right? So you don't need to freak out as much about the galloping. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So let's say you have a easy keeper, like an average, a what?
Ty.
Oh, okay. Well, she's saying this horse's name is Ty. And we're making up a fake name. And they're competing at training level or below, but I can only ride 5 times per week. I can't get out to the barn 6 times per week. What is the appropriate schedule that you would put that horse on, assuming that they don't have any they're not majorly on one end of the spectrum as far as athleticism goes?
Well, we typically don't gallop for training level. So, I mean, I would say if you only had 5 days a week, depending on the horse, you might cut out your gallop day or make one of your jump days a jump/gallop day. Try and fit both in.
But you said that it was a bit, it was sort of quarter horse Tie.
So
I'm pretty sure that's the horse she meant.
No, I'm
so
sure
it's not
quarter horse.
He might need to gallop a couple of times. The other thing is you might need to gallop. I mean, you need to find your balance. And a lot of times the kids are galloping here, wherever, gallop not because necessarily the horse needs more, because they have to learn how to do it, and you have to get fit enough doing it. So I wouldn't probably get rid of the gallop on your schedule. The first part would be the same 5, like we said, 5 weeks to get the horse to working, and then maybe your work would be over 4 weeks or to the show being on the 5th week, so that you have more time to get him brought up. Where another training horse, you do it in 3, where the show's on the 4th week.
So that change from 3 weeks after your build up to 5 weeks after your build up was a result of the 5 days a week instead of the 6 days a week.
And the type of horse.
More the horse. With your 5 days a week, and this is the thing, is we do 6 days a week here. But when people send me a horse, they expect that. And then for me, we've had good luck with soundness and horses going up the levels and everything. And you do what works. Sometimes, I'm not saying, oh my God, it works better than anybody else's, but there are things that work with it that I don't want to drop to 5. I do want to drop to 5 days a week, but I would have trouble bringing myself to do it because it gets ingrained in you. But I will tell you right now, Kim Severson does 5 days a week and has done 5 days a week the whole time I've known her. When she won Kentucky all those times, she did 5 days a week. Someone had told me that, and I was like, oh, I don't know about that. So it's always, people always talk about stuff. So I know her pretty well. And I was like, so that show I was hacking around. I was like, Kim, I hear that you only do 5 days a week and you gallop that 5th day or whatever, and that's it. And she's like, yep. And I'm like, you get the whole weekend off. She's like, just do that. And she wasn't doing it because she was trying to be lazy. That was her schedule. And boy, did it work. The only thing I'll say for me is, I don't feel like if I did 5 days a week, I would ride well enough. I'm not, and I said it to her, I'm like, well, I'm not Kim Severson. I need more days. I don't need less.
When you do 5 days a week, is she's giving 2 days off in a row rather than 2 days scattered?
It was mostly weekends because that worked, because the shows were on the weekend. And if you weren't at the show, maybe you feel better about working on Monday when you actually had a nice weekend like a normal human being, as opposed to this nonsense.
Is there a world, I guess a novice level horse, let's say that world, could someone be out there 4 days a week, or are you pushing it no matter what?
Nope, 4 or even, we are, yes, ours are doing 6 days a week. The novice horses sometimes do 5, but typically, again, our novice horses have to, like, there's this never-ending wheel. The novice horse isn't here to do novice; it's here to get going advanced, or to get me going so we sell it for someone. That's more the case. Nobody wants me sitting on their novice horse I got the privilege of riding one novice horse all the way through most of this last year. And someone commented, because he's for sale, they were like, God, you did a lot of novices with him. I was like, you know what? He needed no more. It's a super talented horse. He wants to jump everything. I was like, he just needed to be rideable. So I didn't need to go down to a training fence trying to convince him to be rideable. He bumped up to training, and he's been like unbelievable. What we do here is based upon, like, we can't do 3 days and advance that horse quickly and as efficiently, and it's not going to do as well. So, but you could definitely, for the novice horse, I think you could do 3 days a week. If you're riding seriously, I would space them out. So it's like intervals. I wouldn't do 3 days and then 10 days off and then another 3 days. That erratic stuff is the worst for any athlete. And that's what you always have to stay away from.
And that's, just to clarify, that's excluding like giving your horse a holiday. Like you support giving them like 2 weeks in a field and then getting them back into work. Is that correct?
Yeah, like Gus is coming back in, and that's why it might be interesting if you might find it interesting to follow him, because he's starting at the very beginning. He had 2 months off after Maryland in the spring, when I wasn't really thrilled with how he was going well, but it didn't feel quite right to me. I actually gave him, I don't know, like 2-3 weeks off at that point. I had goals for him at that point, but the goals would have been stupid to pursue. It wasn't going to work. So I had to step back, which is hard for me. And then we started him up through the summer. It was hot. It's always hot here in the summer. So he didn't compete that much. And then he just came out in the fall, and he just was unbelievable. But that break gives them that he's just came off of, that he's working right now from. You have to build them back up from it, because whatever healing and physical improvements, that's what I always find, is they kind of come out and boom, they're bigger and better for it because of how that works. And it's the same for marathon runners and anything like that. You can't keep a steady climb. And a lot of times you go and it peaks out, you give them that time, and when you bring them back in, they actually haven't really dropped. Things are still good physically, and then they just take a huge jump up, and it's awesome. So yes, they get a big break, usually twice a year.
Got it. And this is kind of a, I don't know, random question, but I'm remembering that when I was working with you guys and riding Val, you had me riding, like flatting her twice a day, and I'm not remembering why. What would be the rationale for that?
Because
rideability.
Yeah, your horse was really unrideable. You two needed to really get together. And a lot of times you'll get on a horse once and it just takes that, and you put it back in the barn for a couple hours, and their muscles are more relaxed and mentally more with it. Parker always would work. For most of his career, he'd work 2 or 3 times the day of his dressage test. 20 minutes, that would be enough. But you can't, people that lunge them to get them tired so then they can ride them. I just think that's just, like, I'd rather deal with one than try to take its athleticism and desire out of it, which is what you're doing on that. I lunged horses, and I lunged some of them before I get on them because they're high as a kite, but I never lunge them to wear them out. I lunge them to train them. So your horse, that was the way we did it. But like sometimes they do get three works for the same reason. And when you do that, your horse didn't gallop that much because we had so much extra work going on. Once she was there would have been times she would have had a big pause in her gallops. But that was one of my points on this with the fitness stuff is obviously going down the level. It's a reverse pyramid. It sits on the lowest level, has the least amount of work, and that's okay. It's sometimes hard because like the beginner novice horse, like Conroy was a beginner novice horse last year at 4 years old. I wanted to work him so much. I wanted to do stuff with him. I think I could have got him going training easily last year. And I had to force myself to stay in his fitness and strength zone. He's athletic, he's powerful, he's got everything going for him. And I forced myself to stay at that point of the pyramid at the bottom because his physical age would prevent me from thinking he should go to the next one, nothing else. So now he's moved up to the next tier as he's ended that year and he's coming into this year. I will keep myself within a certain range there. Same thing. I will not let myself step out of it. And then after that, it'll start to become, I can work the horse however it needs to be worked. So you kind of have to approach it with, there's things that restrict. Age, which is on our list, is one of them. But you cannot overcome bad guidance. Okay? Like I cannot stress it strong. I was thinking about this earlier. I was writing an article about it. You can't overcome bad coaching. I see bad coaching a lot. And I see people that are exceptionally, that have good businesses, but they don't coach well. And you see the failure over and over again. And I think you can't, if you're in that long enough, that's it. That's what you're going to be. The fitness, the same thing. If you miss on this and you don't pay attention to it and you don't get good advice on how you layer that up, it can have an impact that you just don't see coming. And you might not even want to associate the two of them, but if you're honest with yourself, you'll be able to see that. So you keep them at the bottom part of that point where they're working that 4 or 5 days a week. You know, the colt some weeks I worked him 6 days. Once he was better hacking, I started immediately hacking him more. I mention him and reference him because most of the riding done with him last year is on his progressive. And so you can see what we're thinking with a novice and young horse. And that's the baseline. He was doing beginner novice. He did it twice. Could have got out more, but again, I want to pressure him when it's appropriate. I have with him a full, that's a 3-year process. I'm waiting for 3 years to make that happen. It's just got to be that. He gets his time off, but he gets time off for work-related things. He's trying to figure out how to become a stallion.
Oh, I saw that on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, he's going in to learn the romance because he's just like, he's got a mare pregnant, but he's just like, it's all good. Total laid back surfer dude. So the novice horse can be at that, beginner novice for sure can be 3 days a week. But for your end, you're going to want to get fit. You're going to want to get fit enough, which means you need to be on as well. And one of the fitness things that I have to comment on was if you guys watched the vet who did the fitness talk, I don't know, 2 months ago. I can't remember her name now. She's down here in Florida.
I pronounced it wrong, even though
it was like 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay. Well, I won't. But anyways, she was saying that in Jimmy Wofford's conditioning book, and Jimmy's great, and he said you have to double the cross-country time, and that's your gallop, which is exactly what we're doing. So at prelim, you might do 3 4s. There's 12 minutes. Your course is 6 minutes long. You know what? Like, it's pretty simple math. But the problem is when you get down to that bottom part, you don't double that because the beginner novice horse is going for 4, maybe 5 minutes. Yeah. What Jimmy was referring to is the long format. You take the longest gallop you're going to do. So Kentucky's going to be 12 minutes long, and you double that. The horse trials are far different in how you condition for them. So I think it's important to know that. And at the beginner novice level, my horse cantered and galloped a little bit, but only because he had to figure out how to do it. I would never have galloped, or on a day I was like, I just want to do this. And then on some days, because he was just being a butthead and he needed to kind of get it out of him, and going forward is the best way for that. So as you progress up that, after you've got them, say, to prelim, when you bring them in the next time, they're going to be easier to get strong and fit, but that's why that first part is so important, because that leg strength and tendon strength will have, if not diminished, it certainly won't be able to handle the pressure. And the muscle gets tired, the tendon lets go, the ligament gets damaged. You just have to put that in there, and they're going to hold up better. In England, we used to do it on the pavement. It was awful, but because cars go by, the horses would slide. But it was an hour every day. Philip Dutton, an hour every day. I think he even does more. Like I said, we have a walker, and you sometimes feel guilty about it, but because you're like, I'm not out there doing it, but it's probably better because you get it at a speed, because you want to walk with some intensity. You're not walking like you're sauntering into the bar to meet up with your friends. You're walking like you're late to the mall and you need to buy a birthday present for tomorrow. So you walk. You don't meander. All the fitness stuff, it comes to that too, is what sort of intensity you're putting in. But at novice, it doesn't require that much intensity. But if you're riding a prelim horse or above, when you school them, you should be like there, and the horse should be doing something for a good part of its work where it's and I don't mean intense like blasting on him, but like intense collecting, going forward. All those moves are strengthening muscles. I mean, that's why when people lift weights or work out for a sport, they use their whole body. They don't just, move once. So your intensity all the way through increases. The jumps get bigger. You have to jump the height. You don't have to always jump the height, but you have to jump the height a little bit to get them ready for that. If you're doing prelim, you should do prelim exercises. Don't do novice exercises and then assume your horse can be prepared for a prelim exercise. They move differently. Horse jumps big into a combination of prelim and then has to really shorten. At novice, the horse jumps big into a combination. The combination tends to carry open. Like, it doesn't require as much of them effort-wise. So you have to prepare that in your mind as well. The dressage test, there's no good riding them for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and then the day of the dressage test going, I need to get a really good mark. I'm going to work them for 40 minutes. You can't do all your work. First of all, the horse isn't prepared for it physically. Mentally, it's going to be like, dude, what the hell? You're there to have in your warm-up and your build-up to your show learned the best way for the horse to actually compete. And you can't just change it on the day. I mean, that's part of the fitness, I think.
It's actually something that I think, not to plug our own thing, but I think that Ride IQ, because you mentioned you can't just be, like mindlessly going around the ring and expect it to be helpful. Ride IQ helps you ahead of time be like, one, this exercise is going to be purposeful and it's going to ask something of me and my horse. But two, ahead of time, this is going to be a 25-minute effort for us, or whatever is the right number of minutes for your day. Like, those things are put in place for you. I always had such a hard time coming up with the useful thing, and like I would want to ask enough of myself and my horse, but like, what is that? What's the right thing for that to be? I think I know everyone who's listening is already sold on it, but I think it is a helpful aspect.
It is the reason when you guys came up with this, I was like, because I mean, it changed my whole thought process on my students, because I was like, wow, I just thought they were lazy, but it wasn't that they were lazy. They just trot around and canter around and be like, well, I guess I'm done. And these are kids going intermediate and advanced. I'd be like, oh my God, they're so lazy. What is wrong with them? They're not working the horse. And what it was, they just literally on their days, they would go and try and run through what we did in a lesson. But in a lesson, you're constantly moving things around, hopefully. And you're not doing that on your own every day. Again, it doesn't advance you as quickly, and it doesn't fit in the horse enough. They need to warm up before they jump. The jump days, that's the other thing, is on jump days they do, if you've got horses, you've got to do 20 to 25 minutes of flat work, warm up of some sort before you jump. You can scale it back to 15, but you better have had a good hack beforehand or something. But you have to warm those bodies up. And don't think of it as, oh God, I got to warm up for show jumping. Warming up for show jumping is the best warm up in the world, or cross country, because you can do flat work foolishly. There's no like, oh, someone's going to, you go forward, you come together, you bend them, you overbend them. There's no, it's like a free for all. So you should use it for that. You shouldn't be sitting there going, canter around one way, forward, back, going around the other way. The horse is like drool coming out of his mouth, bored. You've got to entertain them and you've got to work their body. But the problem is people go jump days and but what I see that I consider a problem is people go jump day and they just come out and jump and then that's it. But that's not also increasing the fitness as much as if you did flat work first. Plus, your horse is coming into a jump like that. You got to warm up. I mean, it's just the fair thing to do.
Okay, final question. Kinsey and I are like trying to hold our questions in, but we can't. Just for good practice, what should somebody show up? And I know every coach is different, but in your mind, people should show up with what under their belt before a jump lesson? What warm up?
Oh, easy. Like they have to have done 15 minutes of flat work before I get out there. And I watch them if I'm teaching another lesson. I watch them from the front and I'll be like 15 minutes and I'll watch them and they'll do 15 minutes. Or I always know the kids. I know which ones. If I say we're going to do jump lesson, they'll be out there 30 minutes before. And I know if I look out there, they're working or they're walking with some purpose. Like it's not that they're just walking because they're waiting for me to show up. And I'll tell you what, those are the ones. I mean, there's a couple of things I think of when I think of people that are going places, and those are ones that are going to go places. And the other thing is they're nice to their horses. And I was thinking about that the other day. Total segue, that all the kids we had go to the 5-star level were nice to their horses and loved them. And we have had a bunch of younger ones, and they were quite successful. And all of them, that was the one thing that none of them were consistent necessarily in any other way, but that's the one thing they all did. They loved their horses. Can you imagine that being the most powerful thing to get you to your goals? Sorry.
I loved my horse a lot. It did not make it to 5-star.
No, but I didn't.
I know. I'm kidding.
There's lots of other ones that love their horses that aren't going to 5-star. That's fine too. There's other things, things happen.
It is really interesting though. And it's something that I like now that we're a year plus quite a bit at this point into this. And we've heard so many conversations from great horsemen and horsewomen. Like there's more of a pattern to the spending time with your horse, taking time to say hello to your horse and really learn your horse and do best by your horse, which I love to hear it.
Well, how stupid is this? Every morning we walk in the barn. I walk down the one side after I've got my boots on. First horse is a really lovely novice horse. Sometimes I say hi to him. Second horse is Ready. Always tell Ready she's beautiful. Say hi. Parker's the next one on this side. Talk to him for a little bit. Then Conroy, who I really like. He's not quite there yet, but I say hi to all of them. And if I'm not going to say hi to one of them, it's Conroy, just because I'll get on to the next thing. The other side has got a horse on it. They're lovely, and I really like them. But I always feel guilty. I'm always like, I wonder if they're over there going, oh, you didn't say hi to me. What the hell? But you caring about the animal and the idea of warming up just because you care about the animal. But how about this? If you love this, if you love what you're doing and you love your horse, why wouldn't you want to be on it longer? That's the part I always watch, and I'm like, oh, I understand time constraints, but isn't the act of getting to be with them and ride them the sort of point of the whole thing? I don't get it. But that makes fitness. Because they love riding. Sometimes the really determined ones also make fitness because they can't stop themselves from drilling to make something happen. But on those ones, on those two types, you never worry about that fitness. On the other ones, you're like, the horse has got to be there,
Yeah. Well, I've learned a lot in the last hour. So we could keep talking about this for another hour, and I know we will, but I really appreciate you guys talking to us about this topic and always sharing your wisdom. And I hope everyone who attended has a great evening. Everyone who's listening after the fact has a great day. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Guys.
See you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.